Now, again, we're not going to solve this problem in the last 10 minutes of this afternoon, but let me just sort of give you a couple of slides which sort of illustrate the issues. And again, you may say, well, this is something we would like to work on as part of our own development or the development of our leadership team. And we could design stuff around this if you so desire. Let me just leave these slides here. And I'm going to show you a slide that we did talk about. I think have you all seen this slide before about the distinction between technical change and adaptive change? I think I've used this with you before. And basically, what I've been saying before is that in a top-down situation, then most of the leadership skills are about this is taken from the work of a guy called Ron Heifetz, the professor at Harvard, are about technical problems. And he says that technical problems can be solved through applying existing know-how. Leadership as management is about technical problems and technical solutions. If we're top-down, then in a sense we have frameworks in which we have to work, and life is relatively easy because there are solutions to the challenges that we face. And the type of stuff that we're trying to do to sort of mobilize very challenging school environments, there ain't a lot of guidebooks on that, and we have to engage in what Heifetz calls adaptive work because there's a gap here between a desired state and the reality that cannot be closed using existing approaches alone. So a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do, this really quite difficult stuff of taking schools on a transformational journey, requires adaptive ways of working, which is a skill set and an approach which is very much beyond the types of normative training that school leaders typically have. I think I've shown you this slide as well, which is a summary of Heifetz's advice here. He says that adaptive challenges demand learning because people are the problem. I'll come back to that in a second. Mobilizing people to meet adaptive challenges is the heart of leadership practice. So if we go back to the previous discussion on professional development, that is this writ large. And ultimately, adaptive work, he says, requires us to reflect on the moral purpose by which we seek to thrive, and demands diagnostic inquiry into the realities we face that threaten the realization of these processes. So that's why we've been trying to engage today in reflective activities about trying to give us a better handle on where we're going. But as a debate, at the heart of the debate of most of what we were talking about is how do we actually get colleagues to change, and that's why he talks about people being the problem. Not that people really are the problem, but the challenge we have is one of sort of trying to actually mobilize our colleagues to actually work and to react in slightly different ways. And typically in education, that's not what we've done. We've had a very sort of normative, instrumental view of change. We just change content and structures without actually going down to behaviors or values and beliefs. And yet if we don't engage with those, you're never going to get the change that we really want. You're never going to get the change which actually really accelerates learning. And the challenge about why he says that people are the problem is that we are as individuals, we have our own competencies, we live with our own circles of comfort and confidence and competence. And a lot of what we've been talking about requires colleagues to step outside of their circles of comfort, and that's quite threatening and challenging, and we want to get back into it quite quickly. So the challenge of leadership is about how we actually scaffold colleagues, moving from where they are to new ways of working. And I think some of the theory about educational change sort of helps us here. I don't think I've shown you this before. Have I? Don't think so. Have I? All right. Would you leave the class, please? We take people through the three phases to a change process. One is getting started, one is putting into practice, and one is actually embedding it. And often when we're producing plans in our school, the initiation phase, then that's pretty, people are quite happy with that because they're just plans that they're on paper. You get resistance in the early phases of implementation where you actually begin to move into action, all right? And that's where people begin to actually become resistant, because you are requiring them to change, you're requiring them to step outside their rings of confidence. And this is where a lot of change just stops, because it stops in the face of that resistance, and then that goes on for a period of time, and then we produce another plan, and the process goes on. There's a cycle of change and no change.